Ah, Monster Party. The first time I saw this game was actually when one of my younger cousins had this back in the day when we were much younger kids, I guess. Or I guess would be early teens, something to that extent. I remember we'd get up to stage 5 with the dancing zombies. We'd kill zombies for hours on end and they just keep regenerating, and after a while we just gave up because there was no way we were going to beat these zombies because there was no end in sight. It would only be years later that we discovered that you actually had to watch the zombies dance in order to defeat them. Which is funny because that's exactly what they tell you to do, but you don't listen to that advice because you don't believe them. And you see kids, even us seasoned game players, have our share of dumbass attacks. And they don't always originate from the occult shelf or whatever you want to call it. Or something, I don't know. Released in 1989 for the Nintendo Entertainment System, courtesy of Bandai and some semblance of human entertainment, Monster Party is an interesting little game with an interesting little bit of backstory behind its development regarding prototypes, betas, deleted or altered content, that sort of thing. It's a backstory that I will absolutely not touch on because there are other people who can cover that area much better than I could. I direct you to that guy who wants to stop skeletons from fighting or something. He has a video on the matter and does a pretty good job of covering that particular base if you're interested in that sort of thing. I personally just want to talk about the game itself because that's all I really care about at the end of the day. The prototype admittedly does intrigue me, but not enough that I'd want to seek it out and give it a go. I'm happy with the one I got, so we'll just look at that and be done with it. So Monster Party puts you in the role of Mark, a kid with a baseball bat who's been transported to a mystical world filled with monsters of all sorts. Your main objective through each of the game's 9 rounds is to seek out and defeat all the boss monsters who are hiding out in rooms throughout the rounds. Once all the bosses are killed, you get a key that can be used to unlock the final door to the level, which will take you to the next level and reward you with a partial health boost as well as a password to continue your progress at a later time. Monster Party only grants you 1 life, and once your health is depleted, it's game over. Fortunately, you have unlimited continues and the aforementioned password to give you a leg up such as it is. Speaking of legs up, har har, some enemies will drop pickups when you defeat them. There's the heart, which will replenish a bit of health. There's the question mark, which will provide a random effect or no effect at all. And then there's the capsule, which allows Mark to transform into his monstrous ally Bert. And Bert is a powerful ally indeed, capable of flying around the level as well as shooting projectiles of varying range and strength. The projectile attack is an odd beast because depending on the level, it'll either be a straight shot or a wave shot or a long range shot or a short range shot or whatever the case may be. In any event, they all do the same thing, provide you with a ranged attack. While Bert is a helpful ally, the effects of the transformation capsule is only temporary, and after a while you'll revert back to Mark and his tiny baseball bat. The baseball bat itself has a rather short reach, but if you hold down the B button while airborne, Mark will hold the bat out while jumping, which is actually useful in landing a couple hits on retreating enemies if you time it right. It's a particularly useful attack against bosses if nothing else. Also, the bat can deflect projectiles back at enemies, which is both a useful defensive tool and an effective attack in and of itself. For instance, deflecting a shock back at a minor enemy would destroy that foe, or any other minor foe it touches in a single hit, whereas it would take multiple strikes from Mark's bat or Bert's projectile to do the same enemy in. Now of course, getting the projectile to deflect in the direction you want it to go will take a little experimentation, but once you nail this, it makes for a particularly helpful tool, especially against bosses. There's also a fast drop ability for when you're in midair and you want a fast descent. This is done by pressing down on the D-pad, and sometimes it's useful. Mostly when you're bird and airborne and want to reach the bottom of the screen in a hurry, but there's the possibility of executing this ability by accident, and when you do, all forward momentum cuts off and you drop down like a rock. Something to be mindful of, especially when you're making jumps over life-draining pits and things of that nature. Both Mark and Bert can duck, which is useful, but nudge the D-pad downwards left or right and they'll do the worm and inch forward. It's a cool little gimmick, but I haven't seen much use for it, and if nothing else, it's fine for a funny visual and nothing else. In general, control is responsive, for the most part functional, and none too complicated to grasp, with the traditional platformer setup of A, jump, B attacks. Like I said before, the only minor quibble is that it was very possible to do that fast drop thing by accident at the most inopportune times of sorts, thus dropping you into an inconveniently placed life-draining hazard, or at times screwing up your rhythm with boss fights. It's happened a couple times more than I'd care for, and while there's never any instances of bottomless pits to be found, even when you're trying to hop platforms and this happens, not fantastic. Fortunately, it's a minor occurrence, and on a whole, I found Control overall to be perfectly fine and workable for what the game offers. Monster Party boasts 9 rounds of play comprising 8 proper levels and a final boss battle which is its own little round, and for what it's worth, the 8 worlds are somewhat creative and imaginative, as are the bosses you fight, most of whom will bounce around and shoot random crap at you, and then there are just some who will just do nothing. Like the dead spider, who's dead when you get in, so that's an easy non-fight. And I've already mentioned the dancing zombies at the top of this video. Just let the zombies dance and you'll win the battle. A rare pacifist solution in a 1989 Nintendo game? What are the odds? However, when you really get right down to it, imagination and creativity are the only places that make Monster Party worth your while, as the core gameplay can get pretty tedious after a while. And that kinda hurts the replay value in a sense, because despite the creative nature of the levels and the monsters, you're really just moving around the level, entering doors and looking for bosses to kill, and most of these bosses, while creatively designed, will either just bounce around and shoot stuff at you, or they'll be stationary and shoot stuff at you. Most of the enemies even share a similar pattern. A good chunk will simply walk back and forth, covering a certain distance, allowing you to stay outside their projected range and land the occasional cheap shot. Indeed, once you've cleared the game, you've seen all there is to see in Monster Party, and there's really no point in revisiting the game beyond trying to get a higher score or a speedier completion time, which is more for bragging rights than anything. And if you don't care for that sort of thing, well, meh. Monster Party does try to change things up a bit in later rounds, like in round 6 where you have to navigate a maze of doors to reach the boss you have to defeat for the key, as well as the exit to the level, and round 7 has you climbing up ladders and platforms in single screen rooms to reach the top of the tower. Round 7 is also roomed to a particular glitch where you only need to defeat 2 of the level's 3 bosses to earn the key, but if you defeat the 3rd boss, you lose the key and are pretty much stuck in the level. My only advice here is once you get the key, keep climbing up and avoid any doors. Hell, if you're Bert, you could just fly up to the ladder and circumvent everything in between. Collision detection in Monster Party is not always the greatest. For the most part, it works fine, but there will be times when I will seemingly strike at something with my bat and it doesn't register as a hit. And then there are times when something like this would happen and, well, I don't know what to tell you there. Monster Party's only real high point, for better or worse, is the variety and the imagination of the visuals that are presented before you. Now in general, the in-game graphics are of above average NES quality. Sprites animate simply, they look fairly decent and clean, the layout's fine, there's some occasional flicker here and there, nothing special or groundbreaking to be found here, but it's more about the presentation and atmosphere than anything. Each world is different, varied, and provides its own feel and ambiance, whether it be the dreadfully dull sewer level, the dreamy sky level, the not so peaceful water level, the haunting cavern level, or the ear rape level. And it goes without saying that the bosses are actually the highlight of the game, spoofing classic horror bits, being a bit cute here and there, or just plain weird. Each boss has some semblance of personality within its simply animated forms, and I'm not just talking about the quick blurb that gets spoken before a fight begins, which is often amusing. I also love the bloody intermissions between levels. I think they're rather cute. Even as a kid I thought they were kinda funny. But actually when I sit down and think about it, you know, the gruesome imagery, the bloody intermissions, the underage protagonists using drugs. Honestly, considering Nintendo of America's strict yet spotty censorship policies back in the day, it's amazing a game like Monster Party actually made it to North American retail. I think it was only actually released in North America, never saw the day in Japan or anywhere else if I recall. Huh. Monster Party boasts a rather varied soundtrack to serenade the player throughout. There are some sort of upbeat tunes, some haunting tunes, some pleasant tunes, and some exotic tunes in there as well. But to be perfectly honest, This is far from chiptune excellence, and some could argue the quality of the music is a bit on the bland side. This failed attempt at ambiance that plays in round 6 is the very epitome of ear rape. But at the very least, the palette of music here is wide and varied. If nothing else, each level has a tune appropriate to its setting. Sound effects are a mixed bag, nothing notable, nothing special, nothing particularly amazing. They're just there, very deep and profound I'm sure, but that's about it. Monster Party is not the most polished game on the market, nor is it the most remarkable. At its foundation, you have a fairly average level platformer that has a couple interesting ideas, but doesn't really do much beyond the bare minimum. Playable enough to be enjoyed for short bursts, but not much more than that. If it had been packaged as anything else, it would have been a forgotten NES game and nothing of value would have been lost. However, while Monster Party might seemingly lack polish, it makes up for it with charm and personality. Every time I pop this game in, there's a smile on my face whenever I catch something cute and quirky, and the incentive to dwell deeper and see what else the game has to offer is strong as a result. Once all is said and done, however, Monster Party runs its course and lacks any incentive for repeated plays. Rather, it's one of those games that you'll pull out once every so often, give it about an hour or two worth of play, or however long it takes for you to conquer the game, be satisfied with what you got out of it, and set it aside for some other time. All in all, fairly average fare with personality. If you could find a copy for fairly cheap, then go for it, why not?